On July 15, 2026, the man who controls the operating system running most of the world's servers, smartphones, and supercomputers posted a message to the Linux kernel mailing list. It was blunt, as his messages always are. He said Linux is not one of those anti-AI projects, and if somebody has issues with that, they can do the open source thing and fork it. Or just walk away. Linus Torvalds, the Finnish engineer who built Linux in a college dorm room in 1991, who has spent 35 years demanding that every single line of code entering the world's most critical piece of software earn its place on technical merit alone, had just told the global open source community that artificial intelligence is no longer a question. It is a tool. A useful one. And the debate is over. For most of the tech press, that was the headline. Torvalds softens on AI. Torvalds welcomes the future. A pleasant story about a famously cantankerous engineer finally coming around. But there is another way to read that message. A more uncomfortable one. If you are a Windows user who has been watching Microsoft spend the last 2 years cramming AI into every corner of your operating system, whether you wanted it or not, the real meaning of what Torvalds just said is not a story about Linux. It is a story about everything Microsoft got wrong. And it should terrify you. To understand why, you have to go back roughly 21 months to October 2024. Torvalds was speaking to TFIR at the Open Source Summit in Vienna, Austria. A reporter asked him what he thought about the AI boom that had consumed the entire technology industry. NVIDIA's stock had become untethered from gravity. Every major software company was announcing AI products at a pace that bordered on panic. Microsoft had already committed billions to OpenAI. The word Copilot was appearing in every corner of the Windows interface. Torvalds looked at all of it and said, the whole tech industry around AI is in a very bad position.
Whole tech industry around AI is in a very bad position.
And it is 90% marketing and 10% reality.
And it's 90% marketing and 10% reality.
And in 5 years, things will change. And at that point, I will care about it.
And in 5 years, things will change. And at that point, we'll see.
His approach at that moment, he said, was to basically ignore it. That statement ricocheted around the technology world. Here was the man most responsible for the infrastructure the entire AI industry runs on, because the servers training every major AI model run Linux, and he was calling the product itself a marketing exercise. He was not entirely wrong. And he was not entirely right either. But what matters is what happened in the 21 months between that dismissal and his July 2026 declaration. Because in those 21 months, two very different things unfolded simultaneously. In one corner, Linux, Torvalds, and the open source community worked through the question of AI the way they work through every question. Slowly, skeptically, demanding evidence. They watched AI-generated bug reports flood the security mailing list until Torvalds himself said the volume had made it almost entirely unmanageable. They debated. They built policy. They required that any contributor using AI still sign off personally on every patch, meaning a human being remains accountable, legally and technically, for everything that enters the kernel. They introduced a new tag, assisted by to distinguish AI-aided contributions from fully human ones. They let a tool called Sashiko, an AI-powered code review system introduced by a Google engineer into the kernel workflow, earn its place by demonstrating real value to real maintainers. In the other corner, Microsoft. Microsoft, which had already spent decades training its users to accept whatever the company decided to put on their machines, did what Microsoft always does. It announced, it branded, it shipped, it called it the future, it told you that you needed it. And then it found out, the hard way, what happens when you treat your users as a deployment target rather than as people whose trust you have to earn. If you have been paying attention to that second story, you already know where this is going. Let's start with recall, because recall is where the reckoning begins. In May 2024, Microsoft unveiled Windows Recall as the flagship feature of its new Copilot Plus PC line. The pitch was seductive. Recall would take a screenshot of your screen every few seconds, analyze it with AI, and give you a searchable photographic memory of everything you had ever done on your computer. Forgot where you saw something 3 weeks ago? Recall would find it. Microsoft's consumer marketing chief described it as bestowing a photographic memory on everyone who buys a Copilot Plus PC. The press called it a superpower. Microsoft did not disagree. Security researchers called it something else. Within days of the announcement, independent researchers had already demonstrated that Recall stored its data in an unencrypted local database, meaning that any piece of malware that landed on your machine could simply walk out with your entire digital history. Not some of it. All of it. Every website you had visited, every document you had opened, every password field your screen had captured, every private conversation, every banking transaction. The database sat there, readable, like a diary left open on a park bench. Microsoft delayed the rollout, promised fixes, re-architected the storage, made it opt-in instead of on by default, added Windows Hello authentication, encrypted the database, announced that the new version would not share your data with Microsoft or third parties, and then the security researchers looked at the new version. As of April 2026, nearly 2 years after the original announcement, independent security experts were still not convinced. Recall was still shipping. Microsoft was still calling it one of the best features of Copilot Plus PCs, and the fundamental tension at the heart of the product had never been resolved. You cannot make something maximally convenient and maximally secure at the same time. The more useful your photographic memory is, the more valuable it becomes to everyone who wants to steal it. This is not a bug in Recall's implementation. It is a contradiction in Recall's premise. Now remember what Torvalds said in July 2026. AI is a tool, just like other tools we use. The solution is to make sure those LM tools help maintainers instead of just causing them pain. He did not say, ship the tool, call it the future, and fix the pain later. He said, make sure it helps before you put it in front of people. That is a different philosophy. It is a philosophy Microsoft demonstrably did not apply to Recall. And Recall was not the only place this pattern appeared. In March 2025, the United States House of Representatives banned congressional staff from using Microsoft Copilot entirely. The concern was straightforward. The tool posed a risk of leaking sensitive House data to unauthorized cloud services. This was not a fringe privacy group raising an alarm. This was the legislative branch of the most powerful government on Earth saying, we cannot trust what this product does with our information. At around the same point, Microsoft's own leadership began quietly acknowledging what many outside observers had been saying for months. Windows lead Pavan Davuluri admitted publicly that the operating system had, in his words, gone off track with aggressive AI expansion while basic stability issues went unaddressed. The company shifted focus in 2026 toward core stability fixes, after a string of major update failures had eroded user trust. Let that land for a moment. The company that spent 2 years telling you that AI was the future of computing, that you needed a Copilot key on your keyboard, that Recall would change your life, that Windows 11 was being rebuilt around intelligence, that company's own product leadership admitted the OS had gone off track. And then, in May 2026, something happened that reframes the entire conversation. Microsoft announced that its internal agent-based security platform, called M- had used AI to locate 16 vulnerabilities inside Windows itself, not in some third-party software, not in a plugin, inside Windows. In the network and authentication components, 4 of those vulnerabilities were classified as critical. All 4 allowed remote code execution, meaning an attacker who found and exploited them could take complete control of your machine from across the internet. M- used over 100 specialized AI agents to find those flaws. The agents inspected code, debated findings among themselves, removed duplicates, and generated evidence that the vulnerabilities could actually be exploited. Microsoft announced this as a success story, and in a narrow sense it was. Finding vulnerabilities before attackers do is unambiguously good. But read the subtext. The company that has spent 2 years insisting its AI-powered operating system is secure enough to take a screenshot of everything you do That company needed more than 100 AI agents working in coordination to find 16 critical holes in its own code, 4 of which would have given a stranger complete control of your computer. Here is where Torvalds' July 2026 statement becomes genuinely unsettling. He wrote, "AI is not perfect. But Christ, anybody who points to the problems AI had better be looking in the mirror and pointing at themselves at the same time. Because it is not like natural intelligence is always all that great either." He was talking about Linux kernel contributors who were resistant to AI-generated code reviews. But the observation cuts deeper than that context. The failures in Microsoft's AI rollout were not AI failures. They were human failures. They were failures of judgment, of prioritization, of the decision to ship a feature before understanding its implications, the decision to call something a superpower before knowing whether it was safe, the decision to treat user trust as a deployment variable rather than as the foundation everything else rests on. Natural intelligence, the people making decisions at Microsoft, was not always all that great either. If you have been watching this unfold and wondering whether you still want your operating system built and controlled by a company with this track record, there is a practical resource worth knowing about.
The Windows Escape Kit is a straightforward guide to making that transition without losing what matters: your files, your workflow, your productivity. $17 at the link in the description. We will come back to it at the end.
Here is the question that does not get asked enough. When Linus Torvalds says that AI is clearly a useful tool and the debate inside the Linux kernel is over, what standard did AI have to meet to earn that verdict from him? It had to demonstrate, on technical merit, that it helps maintainers do their work better. It could not just claim to be useful. It could not arrive with a marketing campaign and a keyboard shortcut. Senior maintainer Greg Croa Hartman told the Register in March 2026 that something changed, that AI-generated bug reports had suddenly become real and valuable, not because someone announced it, because the evidence showed up in the work. That is the Linux standard. Show your work. Earn your place. A human is accountable for the result. Now ask yourself, what standard Microsoft's AI features had to meet? They had to meet a product launch calendar. They had to meet a marketing cycle. They had to meet the requirement that Copilot Plus PCs have something to justify the Copilot Plus name. They had to exist and ship before the competition. This is not cynicism. It is the documented record. And here is the part that should concern you most directly. You are running this on your computer, not on a server you will never see, not in a data center somewhere, on the machine where you do your banking, where you write your messages, where you keep your photographs, where your work lives. The Linux kernel, the software that Torvalds has spent 35 years defending with a standard that has sometimes driven contributors to fury, that software runs on 96.3% of the top 1 million web servers in the world. It runs on every Android phone. It runs on 100% of the 500 fastest supercomputers on Earth. It runs on the computers that trained the AI models Microsoft is now embedding in your operating system. The thing built by demanding technical merit from every contributor runs the world. The thing built by demanding market share runs your desktop. That gap between those two standards is what Torvalds just made visible. He did not intend to indict Microsoft. He did not need to. Before we close, one more line from Torvalds' July 2026 post. He wrote, "In the kernel community we do open source because it results in better technology, not because of religious reasons, not ideology, not identity, better technology." That sentence is the quiet verdict on everything Microsoft has done with AI in the last 2 years. Recall was not shipped because it resulted in better technology for users. Copilot was not integrated into every corner of Windows because users demanded it. Both decisions were made because the company had an enormous financial commitment to honor and needed those products to become normal before the evidence was in. There is nothing wrong with AI as a tool. Torvalds just said so himself in the strongest possible terms. The tool is real. The applications are real. What is not real is the idea that a company with Microsoft's track record has suddenly, because of AI, become a trustworthy steward of everything that happens on your computer. Torvalds changed his mind about AI. He did not change his standard. And his standard is the one that matters. If this channel has been a part of your thinking about that gap between what Microsoft promises and what independent engineers find when they look closely, subscribing keeps that conversation going. Leave your take in the comments below. This one is going to be worth reading. The Windows Escape Kit is $17 at the link in the description, a practical guide to making Linux work for you without the learning curve that stops most people at the door. It is there if you want it. The decision, as always, is yours.